Jackson here with a Lightroom to Photoshop workflow tutorial. What does "what to edit" mean? Which one do you choose? Well, the short answer is almost always number 3, Edit Original. But let's take a close look at when and why this menu appears, and then examine what the choices are. From there, you can decide if number 3 really is the right answer for you. I have 2 images in this collection here. The first one is a Photoshop document. This is after I've made my edits in Photoshop, adding textures and layers. And the next image is the original right off my camera. This is in the raw file format, and we can see by the name .cr2 that it came off my Canon camera. If I send this image to Photoshop, doing a photo edit in Photoshop, it will open in Photoshop without presenting me with that message or that question, what do I want to edit? Look at the name in the tab up here. It says .cr2, so it still has the same name as the original raw file. But Photoshop cannot save back over top of a raw file. It has to create a new file. Let's do an edit to this, a simple black and white edit, so that we can see the change when we save it. All I'm going to do is we'll do a file close and then say save. When I return to Lightroom, we see the black and white version of this photo, but this is actually a new image. If we look in the film strip, there's 3 of them. Let's scroll this down a little bit. So this one on the end is the original raw, the .cr2 that I opened in Photoshop, and this black and white is called Edit TIFF, because we could not close out of Photoshop and write back over top of the raw file. And this is why you don't get the message what to edit when you open an image that's raw, because Photoshop knows you can't edit the raw file. It's just automatically going to create a new file for your edit. The What to Edit menu comes up when you choose anything other than a raw file to edit in Photoshop, because Photoshop could make edits on a PSD or a TIFF or a JPEG directly without having to create a new file. So let's see how that works. I'll choose this first image, which is my PSD. I'll use the keyboard shortcut to send this to Photoshop, which is a Command E or a Control E on a PC. And that brings up the What to Edit menu. The first option, Edit a Copy with Lightroom Adjustments, will open my Photoshop document into a new document. It'll create a copy of it, and if I had made any Lightroom adjustments, those Lightroom adjustments will be reflected in it. The next one just edits a copy and throws out any Lightroom adjustments. And the third one opens the Photoshop file exactly as I last saved it with all of its layers. And that's why this is the option that you would most often choose. I'll go ahead and choose this one so we can see what this file looks like. We have this image open in Photoshop, and if we look at the layers panel, we can see that there's a lot of things going on. A lot of layers were used in this to build up this look. When working with Photoshop files inside of Lightroom, you have one of 2 options. You can keep all the Photoshop layers, or you can apply a Lightroom edit, but you can't have both. I'm going to switch to the Develop module on this Photoshop document and just do a click black and white to it so that we can see a change. So this is still my PSD file, but I've done a Lightroom edit to make it black and white. And now I'm going to send it to Photoshop again with the Command E or Control E. Again, I have these options. This time I'm going to pick the first one, Edit a Copy with Lightroom Adjustments. So this should open us a black and white image. This opened the Photoshop file. We see that it says .psd, but all the layers are gone and we have a flattened image that's black and white. And if I save this by just doing a Command W and say save, when I switch back to Lightroom, I now have a 4th image in my film strip. And the first one is the Photoshop, or the second one here is the Photoshop file with the black and white adjustment applied. And the first one is a copy of it, resaved. If we look in the bar here, it says edit.tiff. This one here says .psd. Let's go back to the PSD, switch it back to color, or we'll just reset it back to its original state. And this time we'll open it again using the first option, edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. Even though I took away all the Lightroom adjustments, it still flattened the file and all my layers are gone. Let's try one more scenario with this Photoshop file. I'm going to switch it back to black and white here in Lightroom and then do the Command E, and this time I'll pick the third one, Edit Original. We're back in Photoshop with the original Photoshop document opened and all the layers are here, but we don't see the Lightroom black and white edit. To reinforce this, you cannot have a Lightroom edit and Photoshop layers. It's one or the other, and that's what the Edit In menu option is all about. I'm going to reset my Photoshop document back to its original color state. For the most part, I do not use Lightroom to make further edits on my Photoshop files. Instead, I use it for file management, to share Photoshop files online through Mobile Sync, or to export JPEGs with my watermark signature.